This hasn't quite yet made it to national news, but I wonder if this is yet another ticking time bomb before it makes it to national news. Because some of you who might live in sort of the north of England may have heard about this. This has been reported, of course, as we're going to later, Manchester Evening News, Yorkshire Post. A lot of very, very local and regional newspapers have been covering this. But this chaos that is going on here speaks to a larger difficulty and a larger problem that if it's bad here, if it's this bad that it's causing this much amount of chaos at Manchester Airport, how much more chaos is COVID, because that's what seems to be causing it, causing at other places? We don't really know, because again, the government has just scrapped so much stuff recently to stop even tracking or talking about the numbers. As far as they're concerned, you know, COVID's all over. As I've said before, I finished my contract with the council about being like a COVID communicator back in January. But even then, seeing the raw numbers and the raw data, I'm like, this is far from over. This is far from over. And we've got to worry about the potential, as we said many times before, potential of a mutation, a new strain that could basically knock us right back to 2020. Because our government has just gone, right, all restrictions gone. No masks, no social distancing, no reporting, no free tests, all gone. So, of course, sooner or later, this was going to lead into absolute chaos. And it is absolute chaos happening right now in Manchester Airport, to a point where, in a different article, there was a worker there who has worked there for like, I think 30 or 40 years, has quit in disgust at the amount of chaos that is happening at the airport. That's how strongly he feels about it. So before we go diving into the article, please do remember to hit that like, share button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off station link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching and tuning in. And of course, now, thank you for supporting the channel that way. I should know this by now, but yes. As always, thank you very much for supporting the channel that way. And of course, on with the show. So this comes from, again, the Manchester Evening News, with the title of, "It's Out of Our Hands. I flew from Manchester Airport to Dublin this morning, and there was a sea of people and security queues that left the building. But I eventually got very lucky." The airport is telling us there will be a delay due to a severe lack of staff. It's out of our hands, the captain of the delayed 8:05 Ryanair flight from Manchester to Dublin bemoans. The recent struggles of Manchester Airport have been well documented. The chronic staff shortages have meant passengers trying to travel over the busy Easter holiday period have been met with queues that stretched out of the building and into the car park, with many simply missing their flight as a result. Today, I went to see this for myself. My train rolled into Manchester Airport around 5:45, and I made my way through the quiet Skylink tunnel to Terminal 1. What I was met with as I walked down the stairs into the terminal was a sea of people and noise, with queues in all directions. It was completely disorientating, with the longest queue that came out of Security A, which I went to follow until I realized it left the building. Though this was possible, couldn't be the line for a 6 a.m. And then I thought that it could be for check-in. But after checking in with a member of staff who was handling panicked questions from all directions, I was assured that this was the line for security. And again, this is his tweet from the situation now. A member of staff shouted "Security B" and pointed to the opposite side of the terminal, where there didn't appear to be much of a queue. I approached this door and double-checked with a member of staff that I had come to the right place and the line was a fraction of the size that I'd witnessed just moments before. Not to say that it wasn't still busy with the barrier winding people down the corridors, I overheard one family trying to remain upbeat, saying to each other, "We'll be back in the car park in a minute." This was literally where we came in. Thankfully, though, we moved quite quickly, getting to the boarding pass barrier where the security staff shouted at us to stop as there's nowhere to go. The security staff on the whole were doing a fantastic job. With all the negative feed on social media in the recent weeks, the delays to the security being done here was somewhat commendable. They calmly dealt with those panicking to get to their flights and marshaled the large crowds to keep things flowing as smoothly as possible. Now we're cooking on gas. One dad was heard saying his family's getting through security said. I had no issues going through the security scanners. There were no piles of boxes, as had been seen over the weekend. And surprisingly, we managed to get through without much of an issue. Had to go, obviously, through Terminal 1 to Terminal 3, where I was announced that this was where all Ryanair flights were from. But that was at least manageable. I felt very lucky. The departure boards were obviously telling me to relax, and I was able to get a coffee and at least some breakfast. However, before it became very quickly appear, after a quick scroll through Twitter, that this was not a typical journey, with others describing their experiences this morning as chaotic and scary. A traveller called Matt tweeted the airport directly, saying, "This is an absolute disgrace. It's 6:10 and security are already acknowledging that the security nightmares are going to make people miss flights this morning." Media company director Steve Bells said that there were around over 1,000 people in the queue, which snaked out of the departures when he arrived at the airport at 4:50 this morning. And inside, it was confusion with people unclear where to check in and where to queue, he said. He said he made it into his plane just before 8 a.m., where they were waiting then for missing bags and passengers still stuck in security. This, of course, is just a few examples. I saw myself, a mother and a child, told at the gate that their flight had just left, and others running to meet the last call. My fellow passengers and I queued outside the gate for some reason that said last call. And although the gate at, again, 7:33 was met at least with like a 30-minute wait on the stairs, taking us to the time when our flights should be taking off from the runway. Daddy on board, said a young child in front of me before we were taken into the rain outside to board the plane at 8:05. I put my phone in the flight safe mode for a short time later and took out my book in preparation for takeoff. But again, we simply waited. A call came through from the captain to say that it would hopefully be a short delay due to the severe lack of staff and that we could not take off yet. And around 8:35, the captain spoke again to apologize for the delays, lamenting it's out of our hands. And finally, at 8:50, the plane took off for a very short flight to Dublin, which just took over half an hour. We then landed and greeted by plenty of staff and quickly got off the plane. But of course, by the time I'd made the long walk to the baggage claim to check if there were any problems there, it had been and gone. One very noticeable thing throughout my journey through Manchester Airport was seeing everyone sending pictures to family and friends of the queues. With this very visible problems at the airport has faced over recent months, there was a very distinct feeling that people did not feel confident in an easy journey through the airport. And I can't fault the staff one bit. It's not their fault that there aren't enough of them. And the way they calmly dealt with the people on a large scale, often stressed and families, was very commendable. Airport bosses will no doubt come under increasing pressure after the frankly dangerous day where passenger numbers far outstripped the staff able to adequately deal with them. And I'm thankful that luckily we somehow managed to get through security into the departures without too much trouble. But for what appears to be the vast majority of people, there still appears to be yet another chaotic day of what is one of the country's most significant airports. I can only hope that Dublin Airport is not experiencing similar problems. Delays, of course, are down to staffing and recruitment issues being experienced by the entire industry as international travel slowly begins to return to normal following the COVID pandemic. Airport bosses say, I'm unsure that this will bring comfort to many. So, overall, this is quite shocking, to be honest. Again, Manchester Airport is one of probably the most prominent airports, certainly in the country. I've flown out of there, I don't know how many times in my life. hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, we'll be going to Japan in November. Again, fingers crossed, touch wood, you know, salt over the shoulder, etc. But yeah, obviously this was going to be caused by the pandemic, because obviously where have the staff shortages been? And again, we know we are in a recruitment crisis, partly caused, of course, by Brexit, because again, it has limited the access to the recruitment pool that the UK once had access to. So again, this is a Brexit problem. But again, trying to get people into this area, into this business as quickly as possible, and of course, training them up is going to take some significant time. And again, there are some horrific, horrendous pictures of people literally at a security station, literally climbing over each other, trying to get, you know, the plastic, you know, the plastic, the trays that they get from security. It looked, honestly, he's quite right, definitely a hazard. The fact that there were more passengers than there were people to help people in the airport in these situations. So yeah, hopefully this gets sorted out quite quickly. But yeah, it's just something to certainly keep an eye on, especially if you're traveling anytime soon in or possibly out of Manchester Airport. Probably worth noting. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, and of course, the Patreon page down below as well. The one place link called Buy Me Coffee, and of course, the YouTube memberships as well. As always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.